Now, the African continent is at a critical juncture in its development trajectory, and energy transition and sustainable investment are poised to play a pivotal role in driving continental growth. This transition is crucial for Africa as it will not only mitigate climate change, but also provide energy access to the millions of people who currently lack it. While energy transition refers to the shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources such as solar, wind, and hydroelectric power, sustainable investment refers to investment that take into account the long-term social, environmental, and economic impact of the projects. Now, these investments are critical for Africa as they will ensure that the continent's growth is inclusive, equitable, and environmentally sustainable. Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea are leading the way as they both recently signed a $2.5 billion energy deal. President Bola Tinubu and his Equatorial Guinean counterpart, Theodoro Nguema Mbasogo, inked the deal during Tinubu's 3-day official visit to Malabo. For this conversation on energy transition in Africa, we now turn to Olapeju Ibekwe, CEO, Sterling One Foundation. Good to have you on Arise News Day.
Thank you so much, Bolani.
Now, this conversation, it's a long-standing conversation, transitioning from fossil fuel to renewable energy. And we know that for Africa to move forward, to progress, then we must look at ways to effect this transition. Talk to us about this.
Thank you so much, Bolandi. So if we're going to backtrack a bit and look at our numbers, based on current United Nations estimates, Africa currently has 1.5 billion people. Unfortunately, over 70% of this population currently do not have access to energy. And we know Africa is the fastest growing continent, meaning that we have a significant demand for energy, although we already have issues around that. And then there is limited supply. I usually say that where we have problems, then we have opportunities. Several opportunities exist to block this energy access gap. And that is why at the Sterling One Foundation, we have positioned ourselves as conveners and catalysts to attract this required impact investment to critical solutions, including energy. And for us to solve this problem, I think first we need public-private partnerships, not on a low scale, but on a large scale. Serious regional cooperation. 2, I think we also need significant capacity building and knowledge sharing, because it is clear when it comes to renewable energy, we don't necessarily have the technical know-how and skills in this part of the continent. So we need to be intentional to build our local capacity and share the required knowledge. And finally, I also think there should be provisions for the critical stakeholders to meet, dialogue, and collaboratively find ways forward. That is why we co-convened the Africa Social Impact Summit in partnership with the United Nations in Nigeria just recently. And what's interesting is that we had the public sector partner, that is Lagos State, partnered with us to make that convening possible as the host city. And we had over 40 private sector and development partners. And here's why. One organization, 2 organizations, 3 organizations cannot solve these multi-dimensional problems. We know that energy powers our industries. It powers transportation. It basically powers the economy. Where you do not have energy, you cannot have industrialization.
Okay, let's bring it home. I like the fact that you brought it home to Nigeria, which is, of course, our own home base, and we must start from home. Charity begins from home. And now we know that former President Muhammadu Buhari committed to net zero, green gas energy by 2060. How have we done in that regard? What are the challenges? What are the steps taken? And where do you see Nigeria in all of this big picture?
Interestingly, earlier today, I had a conversation with someone who was part of that energy transition plan started by the former president, Muhammadu Buhari. And I had confirmation that, yes, the initial commitment was to raise $10 billion to start the the process. And I got confirmation that yes, funds have been raised, not up to $10 billion. And that process has started. Just recently, I think just a few months ago, we had the commitment of the government seeking to transition 1 million vehicles to be
CNG powered.
I imagine that the funds raised are also powering such conversations, and those are, I know they've already accredited 123 workshops across the country. They've started with 5 workshops in Abuja, and they're looking to scale. What will I say?
They also talked about releasing about 5,000 CNG-powered tricycles over the space of the next 3 months. All of these proposals look good on paper, but where do they get us, and how are we moving in that direction?
So what I can speak to is something I know a private sector organization is already doing with a women-owned cooperative in Kano State, where they have provided e-mobility, EV-powered vehicles for these women. And you know what?
In a country where electricity is still a big challenge.
So, yes, electricity is a big challenge, but we know that this is solar. So it is powered by the sun.
Okay.
So these batteries can be powered, and they're used for transportation. Actually, these women do not just use it for personal use, they use it for businesses. So it's actually supporting their livelihoods. So what I can confirm to you is the process has started already. Are we where we want to be? Definitely not. We have a long way to go. But like I said earlier, it is not just something that the public sector can deliver on. It's something that needs the partnership of the public sector and the private sector at the scale we desire to deliver for our country and our continent.
We've talked about funding. You mentioned the fact that there's still a long way to go when it comes to getting the needed funds to get this transition achieved. What do you think are the potential opportunities to getting this funding to help us achieve or meet that goal? Or do you see us meeting the goal, 2060, net zero, energy?
Well, I am a diehard optimist. So personally, I'm a diehard optimist. But I also don't believe in just wishful thinking. We have to do the work to deliver on the goals. We need to ensure that the right partners in the room. Development financing has to be in the room. Private sector financing, commercial capital also has to be in the room to deliver on sustainability. And then it's not bad for us to also have grants and concessional funds. And that's the role of catalytic capital. So I think it's a combination of finance sources, and we're talking about blended financing and impact investment. That's one thing we prioritize at the Africa Social Impact Summit. We know that the kind of sustainable development goals, indicators we need to deliver on cannot be delivered on by just commercial capital. Also, it cannot be delivered on if we're going to be relying on only grants and donor funds. We need to bring these funds together and find a way to make them work, de-risk the sectors. And I'm speaking to energy now. Although we don't only focus on energy, we also prioritize education, health, food security, and energy is under the climate action body. But yes, we need to ensure that we have funds to de-risk these sectors, to also be able to unlock other capital sources to ensure that the results we require are delivered, and not just in the short term, over the long term. We're talking about 2060. Yes.
It was initially 2050.
Yes. But that's the beautiful thing about iteration. It's not just about perfection. You also have to look at the current realities, look at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and look at this current state of the economy. And we're talking about affordability, because if you have the supply now, we also have to consider the affordability by the average African and the average Nigerian. What is the current economic situation? You cannot look at these situations in isolation. There has to be a mix when you want to review. So 2060, I'm fine with that, but we need to do the work now.
But let's quickly touch on the Lagos State pushing for circular economy revolution. Tell us more about that.
So one thing I love about the circular economy, it speaks to us intentionally decoupling from usage of finite resources. and ensuring that we design out wastage and ensure the continuous use of the resources we have available. I commend the Lagos State that has been prioritizing proper waste management for decades now. And the current stand is something we're completely aligned with. Interestingly, for the Africa Social Impact Summit, there was a pre-event investors roundtable. And in total, based on the numbers that were shared, Lagos State made a request of over about $1 billion on the average to investors locally and globally, including investment in the circular economy and green financing, sustainable investment. We all know that Lagos State is one of the most viable subnationals on the continent, and we at Sterling Foundation are partners with Lagos State, and that we know we've already received some expressions of interest, and we will follow through for those deals.
I know there are those on the other side of the table who don't believe that Africa should be the most committed when it comes to transitioning from fossil fuel to green and to cleaner energy, because they say that the West even releases more greenhouse gases. But we won't go into all of that because we're really pressed for time. But I must appreciate you for coming on News Day. Olapeju Ibekwe, CEO, Sterling One Foundation.
Thank you so much.
For your time.
Glad to be here too.